Good evening, everybody. Welcome so much to the Neighborhood Passions Affinity Network tonight, sponsored by Google, HCA Healthcare, and TriStar Health tonight. I'm Valerie Otinellis. I'm going to be your host this evening. Tonight, we're going to be, of course, covering one of our eight key passions, which is creating community honoring diversity. And the topic is unleashing the power of neighbors who are differently abled. And so tonight we have a representative from Empower Tennessee, and Empower Tennessee envisions a community where people with disabilities are valued equally and participate fully. So tonight we're going to explore how to unleash that power of people who are differently abled in our neighborhoods. And we have tonight Evan Espey joining us, who is the Technology and Access Coordinator with Empower Tennessee. He is an outstanding advocate for the disability community through his professional knowledge and lived experience. He joined Empower Tennessee in 2020, and Evan oversees the Assistant Technology Program and resources to best help consumers reach their maximum independence through the use of AT. You'll have to tell us what AT is. Access technology, I assume.
Assistive technology, but yeah.
Assisted technology. Thank you. Well, Evan, tell us a little about yourself.
Good deal. I will. Thanks so much. I'm happy to be here. My name is Evan, as Valerie said, and I live in Hermitage in a new and growing neighborhood called Magnolia Farms, which isn't too terribly far from the Percy Priest Dam. I was not a native Nashvilleian or Tennessean, but I have lived in Tennessee since I was 8 years old. Graduated from Gallatin High School and then went on to Volunteer State Community College where I did an associate's, and then went to Murray State University in Kentucky and did my bachelor's degree. And I'm currently a student at Belmont University. When I getting a master's in nonprofit leadership and strategic leadership and communication. When I came back to Tennessee after finishing at Murray, I moved back in with my parents for a hot minute, and then got a job actually that was in Antioch at the time, and I lived in Antioch as my kind of first place to live on my own, my first bachelor pad, and it was actually in the Cane Ridge community. So I'm familiar with some of your communities that were mentioned this evening, so that's always fun to hear. Let's see, assistive technology is any device, piece of equipment, or item, whether commercially made, made by you or somebody else that you know, that can help an individual with a disability complete a task, whatever it may be, whether they're trying to eat more easily, whether they're trying to get into a home that has stairs, whether they're trying to get around easier, drive a car, you name it, any kind of living task, employment task or work, school task, there's probably an AT for that, as we say, as opposed to an app for that, there's AT for that. So
Okay.
I oversee our loan program and help individuals find resources to purchase assistive technology with. Sometimes with some of our funding, we can purchase assistive technology for people. We consistently reach out and seek grants for that very reason. And we actually have some funding now that we're working on getting started. And so that's a little bit about me and what assistive technology is exactly.
Well, how did you come to this work, Evan?
So I am an individual with a disability. I'm a paraplegic from the waist down. I was born with a disability called Spina Bifida, which basically meant that my spine was exposed at the time of my birth. And so, of course, the spine being as delicate as it is, that exposure caused some damage and never allowed me to have the ability to walk. And so I've been a wheelchair user for 30 years. And so obviously, serving in the disability community and finding assistive technology has always been a personal passion of mine. And when I got out of school at Murray State, I applied to be an AmeriCorps Vista at an assistive technology resource center that was located in South Nashville, and got the job. And with a brief stint in mental health, I've served in the disability community and sector since then.
I've been working on this question all day, And
Okay.
so please forgive me if it doesn't, come out very well. But so what is the greatest challenges for people with differently abled people as they navigate their lives? And I mean, I understand there's a physical disability, but what would you say would be the other challenges that they face?
Things that we see most common are housing, first and foremost, affordable and safe housing, followed by a close second, transportation. There, a lot of the public transportation that is available is not necessarily always convenient based on schedule and availability. And the third thing, employment. Individuals with disabilities oftentimes are on limited income and have to live in housing that may not be um, in a great area because it has to be affordable, and they have to put what expendable income that they have
Mhm,
into making their homes accessible or
mhm.
buying medical equipment that they need in order to sustain their lives and their daily livelihood and to keep themselves healthy. So living independently and then getting around as they want to via transportation and not just for medical appointments are the biggest areas that we see there's a need, and those are the biggest challenges.
Yes, yes. So I've witnessed situations where I see a level of discomfort when people want to interact with folks who are differently abled. How do you, what would you say to people as they're engaging with their neighbors who may have a physical disability? What would you say to them? How's the best way to interact?
Sure, absolutely. When we see someone who looks different from us physically, some of our natural feelings of, hesitancy come into play, and fear of not wanting to injure them, bother them, or risk the chance of hurting their feelings. And really and truly, getting beyond those barriers, it's just easy to remember. It's important to remember that individuals with disabilities are individuals. They're just like you, me, and everybody else that we know. Uh, we want to be included in everyday activities. We want to eat. We enjoy entertainment. We enjoy reading. We enjoy TV. We enjoy movies. And we just talk to people. A great way to start a conversation is just the way you start a conversation every day. What's your name? Or I like the color of your shirt. Or a cool one that I get often is your chair is really cool. Mine is black. It's got some chrome on it, so I have a little bit of color disarray bouncing off of it a little bit and some style. And you should just find something that's common. If they're wearing a shirt that has a sports team that you're familiar with, bring that up and just start a very basic conversation with them. And I bet you'll be surprised how friendly they can be, and we are, and how easy it is to carry on a conversation with folks who have a disability.
So, what are some ways that our neighbors can help our differently abled neighbors?
Absolutely. I always appreciate help. The important thing is to remember to offer it before doing it, asking an individual if they need help.
Mhm,
An important quote that a lady with a disability made here locally in Tennessee that has become something that's kind of resonated with me and others in the disability community is, when thinking about a person with a disability, presume competence. In other words,
mhm,
I may not be the quickest grocery shopper, but I can shop for groceries. Believe me, I like to eat.
mhm,
I'm
mhm,
going to find a way to get my food.
mhm,
I'm going to be able to load up my lap basket very quickly and easily. And what I might do is I might need you to help me reach the things that are up high. Um,
mhm,
but always offer help and
mhm,
then wait for it to be accepted
mhm,
before you go and do it.
mhm,
Sometimes folks go to help me, and even my own family, my parents, and I have an older brother, go to help me, and I already have a plan in place, and they'll go to do something, and I may have already be balanced a certain way, or be reaching, or have a plan in place to do something different, and they mess it up and I might end up in the floor or on the couch. So it's important to wait for that offer to be accepted. Another thing is and this kind of goes back to what I said earlier, and it may sound a little like trying to walk it back, but some individuals with disabilities, they are in chronic pain, and if you touch them or bump into their wheelchair, it may add to their pain. So it's just something, always offer the help and wait for it to be accepted before you go and do.
Hmm. Yeah, very much so. Tell us a little bit about what Empower Tennessee does.
Sure. So Empower Tennessee is a nonprofit organization, just like Neighbor to Neighbor, and we are a private nonprofit. We do receive some state and federal funding, but we are what's called a Center for Independent Living. We help individuals with disabilities find employment, apply for employment. Right now, we have a service where we're helping individuals apply for benefits. We've had that contract for a very, very long time, and we're actually not going to carry on that contract anymore. But we are in communication with other agencies who are applying for that contract when it's open at the beginning of the fiscal year in July. And so we will still be referring people to that agency and guiding people as much as possible. We have we have several peer support groups. In other words, individuals who are visually impaired and blind. They meet on a monthly basis right now via Zoom or over the telephone, just like we are tonight, and talk about things that are important to them and what they're experiencing, whether it's related to their disability medically, or they're talking about an assistive technology device that they've heard about and they may want to know if somebody's tried it yet before they buy it or before they borrow it from somewhere. And the interesting thing about a Center for Independent Living is we are mandated to be consumer driven and consumer managed. So at least 50% of our staff has to be an individual with a disability, and 50% of our board of directors have to be individuals with disabilities as well. So we are extremely consumer driven. We know, kind of what individuals with disabilities are experiencing because we've literally lived that life ourselves. And I think that's a great thing. You've got to kind of know who you're helping before you can help them is kind of what I always say. And that's one of the most beautiful things about as Center for Independent Living. But we are completely all about empower, hence our name is Empowering Tennessee,
Yeah.
Individuals with Disabilities, Empowering Tennessee. We want individuals to make their own decisions, but we want those decisions to be educated ones. We help individuals get all the information about what it is they're wanting to know or want to do, and then they make the decision on themselves. We don't make any decisions for people. People with disabilities are very competent and capable of making their decisions. And if their disability, such as an intellectual disability, hinders that competence, there are avenues out there that help people that create people to help them make those decisions. You've heard of conservatorships, I'm sure, before.
Mhm.
There's also now a thing in Tennessee called supported decision making.
Mhm.
That's not quite as encompassing of a conservatorship, but it just helps an individual talk to people who know more about a subject area that they may need to make a decision about, maybe such as banking or other finances or buying a house, buying a car, that sort of thing.
We anticipate having the conservatorship program on in Penn, I
Okay,
think in July. So yeah, we'll be able to learn more about that. So how do
perfect.
we advocate for people with disabilities? What can we
We do it
do?
in we do it a number of ways. The Council on Developmental Disabilities, which is a state council, which is members that are governor appointed and have membership from all the major state agencies, meets on a quarterly basis, and they have a public policy director who goes and works day and night at the state legislature when they're in session. And they also have a public policy committee that is created of their membership, and the chair of that committee and leadership of the council go to DC every year and talk to members of Congress, Tennessee's members of delegation, about the issues that are important to the disability community. We also have relationships with school board members, Metro City Council members, about the things that individuals with disabilities, are important. And we implore and encourage people with disabilities to do some of that their own self-advocacy and their own public policy making. There's all sorts of agencies out there and information about how an individual can best be their own public policy advocate and advocate for themselves. And there are agencies that help with advocacy. If somebody is being treated unfairly, or if there's abuse or anything like that, Disability Rights Tennessee is another organization that will file lawsuits if needed on behalf of people with disabilities and work on an issue that way. They also have advocates that will go to meetings with people and on behalf of people and help them work on issues. And of course, in the for-profit sector, there are law firms that will do that. I'm honored to say that my brother works for a nursing home abuse and neglect firm, and they will oftentimes do a great deal of advocacy for people. And it doesn't always have to go as far as a lawsuit. Sometimes it's a matter of just being educational to an individual or a group of people who may genuinely not understand what the problem is or what problem they created.
Well, so neighbors, what can neighborhood leaders kind of do in the realm of advocacy?
Absolutely. Stand up for your neighbors, help your neighbors who have disabilities get to meetings of public opinion. When there's an opportunity for the public to attend meetings and maybe they don't have the ability to pay for a cab or an Uber, either help them pay for that Uber or a Lyft, or access ride, or if you're able to physically give them a ride to those locations, go ahead and be there. Go ahead and get them to those meetings. If they just cannot leave their house, take down their story, take a picture of them, and go to the meeting for them, and tell their story, and use that picture. I can't tell you how many times we've heard from leaders in the community that facts, figures are fine, blah blah blah. But if I'm given a story and I'm given a picture, I am more likely to remember that situation and that person than just hearing with no visual aids and no other information. And be a representative, be an advocate of yourself in the meeting. I have a neighbor who is in a wheelchair, and the sidewalks are not even, or there's a big telephone pole in the middle of the sidewalk, or there are no sidewalks, because that's not just a disability issue. Obviously, that's an issue for everybody, especially for children who might be living in that neighborhood or coming to visit people who live in that neighborhood. That's a major safety issue.
Right. I think I saw a hand. Wacy, did you raise your hand? You're on mute.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, we all do.
Still on mute.
Yeah.
Okay, here I am, everybody.
Good deal.
Okay, Evan, it was really good to hear the things that you're telling us tonight. My experience in having to work more closely with people who are otherly able, and that's the term I use because I heard it, and for some reason I started using it, and it's something I wanted to also address. But when I used to teach in Bowling Green, Ohio, at a university there, and we had students, many students who were challenged in various ways, visually impaired, hearing impaired, or physically. I had one student who was born without legs. He was the brightest, most engaging young man I've ever met in my life. I think about him right now. Very good student. And I became very, attuned to the needs of people when I was teaching there. When I came back to Nashville, Vanderbilt University used to do a series of workshops. I think it was through the Kennedy Center. I'm not sure if that's where it was, but I went to several workshops that they sponsored on working with people who are differently able. And there was a few years ago, there was a listing of terms acceptable terms, preferable terms that we should use. And I started using these terms. And not only that, I started encouraging other people to stop saying certain things, to stop using certain terms that were archaic and insensitive. And we were not necessarily aware how insensitive these terms were. So when I had this experience at Vanderbilt with these workshops, I was just like enlightened, and I felt myself empowered to go forth and be an advocate. And then I met a friend who was T-boned in a bad car accident. We worked together. We became solid friends. And as a matter of fact, he was on the board of Empower Tennessee a few years ago. And I'm gonna close out by saying that I volunteered at Empower Tennessee to help write some grants. And so that's why the article that I sent Valerie to send to you, I want you to look at that. And if there's anything I can do in terms of being a researcher for grants, let me know. I'm available to help.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for speaking. You know, that's great. That is absolutely great. And ironically, we are working on kind of revamping our volunteer program. I and a coworker of mine, our information and referral coordinator, are actually in charge of doing that. And we're working on, you know, an info sheet and an application. And once we reopen the office when COVID's a little more managed, we'll be looking for volunteers. So I will make sure that you all have my contact information, and I would love to have you volunteer with us again. And I know our leadership would love to have your help.
Yes. I have another hand up, Sharonice.
Yes, I have a question about accessing housing that may be transformed so that it is suitable for someone that is differently abled. What's the best way to approach that? Or if there's a need for someone with a current home to apply for a grant to maybe have the access within the home transformed for their level of need?
Absolutely. Very good question. You know, when doing like an assistive technology assessment, one of the first questions we ask to kind of guide us, because I'm sure anybody who's done any looking on your own, you know, there is a ton of assistive technology out there for all sorts of different needs. So we always look at, and what I would do is, and I've just actually built and bought my very first home recently, is what exactly is it you're trying to do? So obviously you're trying to access the home in this case and get around in the home independently. Think about, for that individual or individuals, you know, what do they use for mobility? And is that a power wheelchair? Is it a walker? Is it a manual wheelchair? Is it all the above? And that will tell you, you know, do I need to make sure doorways are especially wide? Do I need to get ADA door handles where it's a lever as opposed to a doorknob? You know, will my bathroom sinks and kitchen sinks need to be lowered so that I can reach them? And does there need to be a way for me to be able to roll underneath the sink easily and not have cabinetry under there, as well as, you know, the bathtub and the shower? You know, am I gonna have a roll-in shower? Am I gonna have a shower chair? Or does this person prefer baths? And, you know, how are we gonna get in and out of the bathtub? As far as the resources to do that, there are several out there, and I can't think of all of them or specific names off the top of my head. But what I would encourage you to do is our website is empowertennessee.org. Let me double check that I gave you that right.
Put that in the chat for us, please, Evan.
Yes, absolutely. What I would encourage you to do is go to, let me go back to our homepage so I get the right URL, but I'll get it in there in the chat in just a second, is contact us, either email or phone, and our INR coordinator, that's a hard thing to say, will get you in touch with our independent living specialist who does a lot of our housing work, and she will be able to get you connected with a plethora of resources and agencies that can help with getting a home modified or making sure homes are modified, and help you figure out what exactly should be done to the house to get it as accessible as possible.
Do you all
Thank you.
find, thank you, yes. Do you all find that developers are doing a better job of, putting homes together that are better accessible homes?
It's definitely getting there. When I was starting my housing search, I looked at obviously everything from currently built to newer construction, homes that would have been built for 10 or 20 years to newer construction, etc. And obviously wanted one floor, etc. And as few steps inside so that I could get a ramp and manage that. But when my real estate agent discovered this neighborhood, ironically, just diagonally across from my house, and a lady who uses a power wheelchair was just getting ready to close, and so they had built her house from scratch. We're a brand new neighborhood, and they already had kind of blueprints drawn up to what they did with her house, and they were just able to modify those blueprints to what I was looking for and what I needed. But ironically, shortly after I joined the staff at Empower Tennessee, and after I began the building process, I had a contractor call Empower Tennessee looking for some guidance and advice on a house that he was getting ready to build, and he was literally in the process of starting the blueprints. So he and I had a very lengthy discussion about, how wide things should be and what kind of turnaround space you need in the bathroom, and so on and so forth. So it's getting there. And I mentioned the Tennessee Council on Developmental Disabilities a little bit ago. I served on that council actually for 6 years. And one of the things that they were working on with other partners in the disability community is the concept of visitability. And it's a nationwide thing, but what it is it's an encouragement and an education to builders and contractors to make every house that they build visitable, meaning they can, and anybody in a wheelchair or with mobility issues can get at least in the front door of the house or to the main level of the house, and that there's a bathroom on the main level of that house that is relatively accessible. Of course, accessibility is different for everybody based on the disability need, right? But at least making the house somewhat accessible to someone who could at least visit, hence the visitability,
Right.
while they were there. So yes, it's an up and coming thing. And I think for a long time, architects and contractors thought making things accessible wasn't as aesthetically pleasing, but they're finding ways and they've developed ways to kind of do that. And, now I have a nice poured path from my driveway to my back patio. My garage is poured level up to my house, so there's no step up into the house. So there are ways, and more ways are being designed and improved all the time.
Yeah, that's great. Visitability. That's great.
Visitability.
Yeah. So, is there anything we haven't covered that? Oh, I got another hand. Sorry. Yes, Jim.
You're
You're
muted.
on
Uh-oh.
mute.
I caught myself. So, Evan, I'm sure that the leaders of most neighborhood organizations would say we really want to have everybody come to our neighborhood meetings. And we got at least three people who are chairs of their neighborhood organizations here tonight. And I'm sure they would say that we really want to communicate that to people who are differently able. But can you help us understand some of the things that we should say or do that would create a welcoming, I don't know if it's a welcoming environment, but a welcoming feel that would clearly articulate to folks that are different, who are differently abled, that they're welcome at our neighborhood meetings?
Absolutely. The first and foremost is have your neighborhood meetings at a location that's accessible. And I know that sounds probably obvious, but I can't tell you how many places I've been invited to, and I get there and there's no accessible parking. There's 2 or 3 steps up into it, or the doorway's too narrow. So make sure that where you're having your meetings, they're accessible. and not just to get in and out of, but make sure that there's a restroom there that folks can access and use should the need arise while they're there. Make sure a room is large enough. Make sure that there is a place, especially if the seating is anchored into the floor already, like an auditorium or what have you, or a classroom. Make sure that there's a place that someone in a wheelchair or some people in a wheelchair could still roll in the back, or have a place to be without creating any sort of a fire hazard, or prohibiting themselves from getting out quickly. And if the seating is removable, take several chairs out and just print that universal accessible sign that we see on parking lot signs, and take that down to the floor so that folks know to not put a chair back there when they're coming in. A lot of folks want to sit with friends, neighbors, things like that, so just make sure that there's an obvious area for people in wheelchairs to be. Think about just basic things. If you have a PowerPoint presentation, or if there's going to be an item that's going to be shown during those things, or pictures, have whoever's kind of leading that meeting or in charge of coordinating that meeting, make sure that those things are described for anybody who might be visually impaired. So we've got a green trash can on wheels that the disposal companies are going to be bringing and replace all of our trash cans, things of that nature, just so that they can get the full effect, or as much as possible, of the meeting, just like any other typically functioning normal neighbor would at that meeting.
Really good insight. Wait.
Right. What about in promoting? Because that's great if people come to the meetings.
Sure.
But how do we get the word out that this is a welcoming space, and that any suggestions for that?
The things that come to mind first is, most neighborhoods kind of have a HIP Facebook page. Post in those Facebook pages like HIP Antioch, HIP Hermitage, HIP Donaldson, there's this new neighborhood here that we're going to have an organizational meeting, and put all your details in that. Use social media. It's a great tool to get folks out, because most folks, if they don't have internet, they know somebody that does, that can maybe alert them about something. Hey, I know you're thinking about moving around or looking at this neighborhood when you're looking at a new house or another house. This place posted that they're going to have an informational meeting, and that's just a great way to get information out. And a lot of the agencies that serve individuals with disabilities, specifically Empower Tennessee, the ARC Tennessee, the ARC Davidson County, the Tennessee Council on Developmental Disabilities, the Tennessee Disability Coalition, a lot of them have Facebook pages and social media that they'd probably be more than happy to help promote meetings and things about online.
And it would probably be helpful to have language in your announcement that says this is a physically accessible space.
Absolutely.
And have photographs that include people who are physically challenged.
Sure. Definitely the language piece, and the pictures are even better. And in the language piece, you might, if you're going to do a map, if the area is larger or something like that, and you're going to pinpoint exactly what room it's in or something like that, let folks know where the accessible parking would be and where the best ramp is for getting into the door that's closest to the meeting room, et cetera, et cetera.
We definitely have did you want to say something else, Jim? I'm sorry. No, okay. We definitely have neighborhood folks who are not internet savvy, and so we're making copies of invitations, flyers, so putting a symbol on there would be appropriate to kind of signify the accessibility.
Yes, absolutely. When looking at apartments, for example, if you pay attention, looking at their websites, so on and so forth, they will oftentimes have that universal accessibility symbol on there, showing that they do have curb cuts. They do have accessible parking. They have units on the first floor. Some places obviously even have units that are designed for an individual with a disability. So that is just a great way to demonstrate that you have accessibility on your mind, and that you're trying to make it a priority, and that you are giving some basic thought process to that, and that will alert people that oh, this is something that I can probably attend, because it looks like it's obviously important enough on their mind that they put it on their flyer. They're obviously going to make sure that there's accommodations there once I get there.
I went to a neighborhood meeting and they had a downstairs bathroom, and even I had trouble
Oh, yeah.
navigating a very narrow and weird, steps, to get down to the bathroom. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, we have to think about those things. I have a couple of questions. One, we've used a lot of terminology tonight to
Yes.
refer to people who are differently abled. So will you talk to us just a little bit about what, are we using the appropriate terminology?
Sure. The first thing to remember is what's called person first language. I'm a man in a wheelchair. You always want to put person first. Valerie wears glasses. She's not she doesn't wear glasses. That lady in the glasses. So always put the person first. The person in the wheelchair, the person who is blind, the gentleman who is blind, or the gentleman down the street who wears hearing aids. So the person first language is huge. The next thing is just disability is fine, differently abled is fine. All sorts of agencies use different language, and the important thing is to use not to use terms that are derogatory. In previous generations, a big word was crippled. In the days of polio, he became crippled by polio. That's a terrible word to use. It makes me always think that like the legs were twisted or braided together. It's what I always envisioned when I heard the word crippled. So disability, handicapped is still okay. If you think about golf or sports for a second, you oftentimes have a handicap around that, so that's not necessarily a negative connotation. Accessible parking, all of those things are fine. The important thing is the person first language, and some populations of disability or diagnoses are starting to wanting to be referred by their disability. For example, some of the individuals in the autism community are wanting to be called autistics. So the really important thing is to start out with yes, ma'am, or sir, and then find out what they like to be called if you're going to be dealing with several members of the same type of disability, and go from there. Questions and just genuinely asking and being polite about it will get you a long way. But the main thing, if you're going in with no kind of history with the individual, is just the person first language.
What are some ways of helping folks have we're going to be having a workshop on courageous conversations, which is really about how you address situations when you are confronted with inappropriate behavior or comments. So
Right.
how would you say to folks, how do you have those courageous conversations when perhaps you've heard some inappropriate language as it relates to people with disabilities?
Sure. I worked for an executive director for a long time, and he did a lot of behavioral analysis of work before he started that nonprofit. And, one thing that he always taught me is ignore the bad behavior and reward the good. And that works well when someone is acting out, or, someone might be having a physical meltdown or a mental breakdown. But I would just, politely as possible say, I don't think that's the best word to use, or the better term is this, and just be kind of upfront about it. Genuinely, when people are challenged, especially in a group, they're going to back down relatively quickly, 9 times out of 10. We've certainly seen things, unfortunately, in our society the last 10 or so years that make us very uneasy about that, and we know that there's a lot of hate and dissension in our society and in our communities. But I think as often as possible, for those of us who are willing to be leaders in our neighborhoods, if we can be the leaders and help be the advocates for change, it's going to happen. And the more and more of us who can do it, and the more of us and the more that we can recruit to being polite and teaching individuals the polite way to be and the right way to be and the humanitarian way to be, the more that's going to grow. That's going to spread like wildfire. Stamp out the hate. We've all heard that phrase, and the more we can do it, the better. Don't If somebody is being aggressive, don't try to meet their level of aggression. Keep your voice calm as hard as it can be, and believe me, I've been there. And just try to keep de-escalating as much as possible. As people may yell because they're being challenged and they don't want to be called out, don't yell back, but just educate people. I was in a meeting last night, and a gentleman from the disability community said that this is a better word to use for referring to the type of population that you're talking about or the situation you're talking about, and just go from there. And unfortunately, some people are never going to change, and we're not always going to change minds of every person, but do your best, and be brave, because you're doing the right thing. And remember that, use that as your energy and your mojo to keep doing what you're doing. And at the end of the day, know that you're right, and don't let anybody else change your mind. And even if you didn't sway somebody's mind that night or change their behavior, know that you may, even somebody that's in that room or in that situation that may not have said a word, you may have changed their mind. Or even somebody else who may not be quite ready at the level you're ready to be an advocate or a member or a leader in your neighborhood. You might have empowered somebody to be the next advocate or leader in their neighborhood that's there. So just remember that.
Powerful, powerful words. Thank you so much, Evan. Yeah. Is there anything you think we need to know that we haven't kind of talked about tonight?
There's been a lot of great questions, and this is a topic that we could obviously talk about until midnight and still not cover everything. But the biggest thing is, remember to let individuals with disabilities be individuals first. Offer help and wait for the acceptance before you do it. I can't tell you how many times at the grocery store or at a sporting event, people go and grab my wheelchair while I'm getting it out of my car. Don't do that, because I'm also might be balanced just right. That might be helping me keeping myself in the car at the same time. So just always offer help first and wait for the acceptance before doing anything. And remember, an individual with a disability, the wheelchair or their red and white cane, if they're visually impaired, and their hearing aid or their speech communication device, that's a part of their body. My wheelchair is a part of my body, so don't grab it. That would just be like me grabbing your arm and taking you into another room. That's just not a way to be. And if you're at a business that doesn't seem to be as accessible, or maybe the accessible stall is not working, or it's being monopolized, say something to the leadership at that public at that place you're at, whether it be a store or a museum or what have you, and just keep your eye out for what you're doing already, but just expand it to the disability community, and keep being that voice for change.
Evan, is there a resource either on your website where people can get a list of things to be able to kind of assess their homes, their places of work, their places of worship, so they can start kind of equipping all these places to be accessible, if you're not already?
I'm actually not aware of a good inclusive list, all-inclusive list. So let me do this, Valerie, if I could, let me get to tomorrow morning and reach out to my coworkers and see what resources we have. And what I'll do is I will email it to you, or several links to good lists, and have you maybe disseminate it to this audience this evening to their email addresses. And we will, but I would definitely work on getting that.
Because we definitely have, as I said, meeting places that need to work on their accessibility for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
The big things are the bathrooms,
yeah.
because some people think, I just have the room and it's big enough for a wheelchair to get through the doorway, they're good to go. Well, what if somebody has a bathroom emergency?
Mhm.
So parking, a wide enough front door to get into the facility, and then if it's in a separate room, wide enough doorway to get into the room, and then the bathroom, kind of in that order. Because if I can't access the building to begin with, obviously none of the other stuff matters. So
I'd like to really, like in our newsletter, say, is your meeting place accessible? You know what I mean?
absolutely.
And be able to send that list out to folks. Any other questions from the audience before we? Yes, Carolyn.
Would- I would like to know, in my neighborhood, is there any way possible that I could get a list of families or persons that are disabled? I live in a small neighborhood, 216 homes. So is it any kind of list that say John Joe is disabled? Then that way I will know how to send out my flyers. Is it any such list that I could get for my Pacific neighborhood?
Typically, those lists don't exist, and the reason is for people's privacy.
Mhm.
There is a service called 911, and not in the sense of calling 911, but what it is, Smart 911. That's what the word I was forgetting. And what it does is it's a website that individuals can register their address with, and it connects to 911, so that if a person from that address calls 911, it will pop up on that dispatcher's computer everything that they've put in that web page, whether somebody with diabetes lives there, lung cancer lives there, someone in a wheelchair lives there, someone with autism might live there, things of that nature. So I might go to that Smart 911 website. If you Google it, you should be able to find it, and just, you might reach out to them and see if there's anything like that. But as far as I know, just for privacy concerns, there's no such list. It really exists for the public to get access to.
Okay, thank you so much.
Of course.
I want to make a suggestion to Carolyn. This might not work, but my neighborhood, I'm in Eastwood, and people who use wheelchairs, most times they have ramps in the yard for access into their homes. And so if you were interested in reaching out to your neighbors this way, you could just, because I'm like this, I'm a Southern woman, and I don't have a problem waving to people and speaking to people on the street. So I could, if this is my concern or my passion to work with my neighbor with disabilities, I might just go to the front door and say, hi, my name is Carolyn. I live around the corner, and I'm a neighborhood representative, and I have some information to share about meetings that we're having. If anyone here who uses this ramp would like to attend, well, we'd like to make sure that they are able, that they know about it. And I would just take it from there. And I think that just being, as Evan said, being upfront about it and showing your passion about this, I think people will respond the same. They will respond to you with the concern that you're sharing to them. And I think that might be a way you can do that.
Thank you, Wacy. Sharon.
Thank you.
No, I just sent some hand claps, that's all.
Oh.
That was a good suggestion.
Yes. All right. Are there any other questions? Well, Evan, thank you so much for helping us better and understand how to engage with our differently abled neighbors. Really wonderful information this evening. Thank you. And I want to thank all of my audience members for their great questions and being a part of the conversation. So next week, we're going to have Andrew Hawkins. He's going to be discussing special enrollment for the affordable healthcare plans that are coming up. So that should be pretty interesting. And remember, great neighborhoods don't happen by accident. Find your neighborhood passion. And
hey, Valerie.
Yeah. Oh, I
You're
forgot.
closing. I'm sorry, everybody, but we just got this event coming up on Saturday, May 15th, and we got to make sure everyone knows about it. And I know some of you are already signed up. I love it.
Yeah.
C4N Nashville. We didn't have it last year, and this year it's going to be virtual, but it is a one-day training and networking opportunity for anybody who wants to make a positive difference right in their own neighborhood. And this year it's going to be from 9 to 3. It is virtual, with plenty of breaks because we don't want people to get zoomed out. But it's going to be amazing. We have over 25 different workshops, facilitated conversations, panel discussions, and presentations on a wide range of topics, anything that's going on in neighborhoods. Valerie wanted me to be sure to talk about the ones for creating community and honoring diversity. We have some great ones. One that we have is how to partner together with folks in a culturally diverse neighborhood. And we're bringing in some really folks from different cultures to really help us understand how we can do that better. And so that's one of the workshops in that. The other one is a two-parter, and it is led by Kia Jarman, who's on our board here. She is amazing. And she talks about having courageous conversations. So you'll have a chance to do both, to do a lot of actual practicing with each other and having those conversations. So even for just those two, it would be a fantastic day. So I just want to encourage you to do that. I'm going to put in the room right now the link. If you go there, you'll be able to see all the information about it. But it's one of these days that you really don't want to miss. There's over 50 faculty, and they are neighborhood and community leaders, all local, who have had some great successes, and they're willing to share with you. And the other amazing part of this is all the people that come to the event. Like tonight, right? Sure, it was great to have Evan. Evan had some amazing things to say, but so did you. And so you get to meet folks from all over the city who are really trying to do amazing things, and you get to learn from each other. So I encourage you to do that. And now Valerie gets to say.
Good night, everybody. Thanks
Good
for
night.
coming.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
everyone.
Bye.
Have a good evening.